There is an intangible asset that you quietly throw out the window every single day. It is not money, nor just time, but your attention, the silent power that dictates the quality of your inner life. You squander it on bitter people, pour it into soul-draining situations, and let it be swept away in a world designed to scavenge for every fragment of human focus. Every time you bristle at a pointless insult or dive into an argument just to prove you are right, you are handing over your emotional remote control to someone else. The hastier your reaction, the more you expose your vulnerability. The harder you try to strike back, the deeper you fall into the trap of chaos. The world outside will never stop being noisy. There will always be those who make a living by poking at the deepest cracks in your mind to provoke a reaction. But the power has never belonged to them. True freedom does not begin with a fierce rebuttal, but with a much colder choice: reclaiming your attention. To ignore, in its deepest sense, is not weak indifference. It is a refusal to nourish what is unworthy of entering your inner world. The crowd often mistakes silence for submission. They think not reacting is losing, evading, or lacking the courage to confront. But those who thrive on drama and crave attention fear nothing more than that: a cold, empty void with nothing to cling to. When you cease to provide the agitation, the justification, or the impulse they expect, you strip them of the only fuel that makes them feel powerful. That is when the tide silently turns. So, what truly happens the moment you stop reacting? What is released when you simply offer a faint smile, quietly withdraw your energy, and leave the other person flailing in the mire of their own making? That is no longer the silence of the weak. It is the stillness of someone who has begun to master themselves. Part 1. Attention as a currency. In a world driven by distraction, your most expensive asset isn't in your bank account. It's in how you allocate your attention. Every lingering gaze, every fleeting preoccupation, every time you let your emotions be pulled off orbit, a piece of your energy leaves you. A random jeer online, a judgmental look at the office, or someone cutting you off in rush hour. These seemingly trivial things quietly drain your mental vitality every day. When you constantly pour your focus into people who don't even respect you, you are letting the outside world set the price for your own mind. The brutal truth is that humans are obsessed with scarcity. Whatever is given away too easily, quickly loses its value, and your concern is no exception. When you are always present in every meaningless drama, always heatedly justifying yourself against every misunderstanding, or diving into every conflict just to be right, you become far too predictable. Those who thrive on emotional scavenging will soon realize that by simply nudging your ego, they can hijack your entire internal state. The cost of reacting too fast is often not just an argument, but the silent erosion of your dignity and composure. Real power begins the moment you learn to hold on to that stream of energy. Next time a situation deliberately pushes you to the brink of anger, don't react in the first second. Let it pass through a few breaths. Then ask yourself, is this truly worth trading my peace for? Reclaiming your attention doesn't make you callous. It turns you into someone who selectively chooses where their mind is allowed to dwell. You no longer pour energy into what unsettles you. You reserve it for the values that actually build the path you're walking. When you stop scattering your presence on cheap things, the world is forced to recalibrate how it treats you. But why is keeping a cool head in the face of sarcasm, insult, and provocation so difficult? What lies deep within human psychology that makes us want to spring into defense the moment a wound is touched? It is precisely there that the true nature of ignoring begins to reveal itself, not as an act of avoidance, but as a much higher level of internal mastery. Part 2. The trap of reaction. When a wound is touched, the human survival instinct almost always urges us to strike back immediately. We fear that without an instant response, we will lose face, lose control, or even lose the respect of others. An irrational reprimand from a boss during a meeting, or a sarcastic comment aimed at an old scar, is often enough to set our inner world ablaze in seconds. In that moment, we feel compelled to explain, to refute, to say something sharp to regain the upper hand. But the bitter paradox is, the hastier the reaction, the deeper we step into a preset trap. Because the essence of provocation lies not in the words, but in the reaction it extracts from you. When you get angry, justify yourself, or engage in a back and forth, you have handed the remote control of your internal state to someone else. Manipulators don't actually care about the truth. What they want is the agitation, the unstable energy, the feeling that they can make you lose control. Their words, standing alone, are sometimes just empty noises. It is the emotion you attach to them that turns them into a wound. And so, every time you react without control, you aren't extinguishing the chaos. You are only fueling it. The way to break this cycle isn't by learning sharper comebacks, but by the ability to create an internal buffer. When provocation arises, let it pass through a few breaths before you decide if a response is even necessary. View it as an external impact, annoying, noisy, but devoid of real power unless you open the door and let it in. Refusing to react isn't weakness. It is the act of pulling the plug on someone else's drama. When you maintain silence at the right time, the one left behind in the chaos is no longer you. It's them. But how do you train that buffer to be deep and steady enough so that amidst every provocation, your inner self remains unswayed? Part 3. The power of silence. A Stoic perspective. Stoic philosophers thousands of years ago understood an uncomfortable truth. The world will never stop throwing impacts at you. But whether you stoop to pick them up and hurt yourself is always your choice. In this lens, silence has never been a sign of weakness or submission. It is the manifestation of an inner self tempered deeply enough to no longer react to every external noise. It is not a retreat from conflict, but a refusal to be dragged down to someone else's level of chaos. Imagine someone deliberately casting a sarcastic remark in public, or a cold, judgmental stare meant to lower your value in your own eyes. They are waiting for you to flush red, to explain yourself, to lose your cool, thereby handing them control. But instead of entering that drama, you simply remain silent, looking straight ahead, letting the remark fall into the void without receiving any fuel. In that moment, the tide silently turns. The one who loses the initiative is no longer you, but the person who tried to use provocation to manipulate you. This is the core of Stoic detachment. Silence doesn't require you to be a cold, unfeeling person. It requires you to be alert enough to see the event clearly without being consumed by it. An insult, after all, is primarily sound and concept. It is your own hurtful interpretation that turns it into a dagger in your soul. When you refuse to participate in the chaos, you don't just maintain your dignity, you reclaim the mastery of your inner world. Part 4. Dealing with toxic people. Toxic people in relationships rarely approach you with a genuine desire for dialogue or understanding. What they seek is your reaction, an emotional energy source that helps them fill their insecurities, reinforce control, or maintain deep-seated manipulative habits. You can recognize them through familiar scenes: a colleague dropping sugar-coated barbs in a meeting, or an acquaintance constantly playing the victim to solicit attention and pity. Every time you get angry, explain, or show frustration, you are giving them exactly what they need, the power to impact your mental state. Relating to such people is like a silent game of tug-of-war. They jerk the rope with a provocation, and you instinctively pull back to defend your honor or prove you're right. But the harder you strain, the deeper you are pulled into their game. The way to break this deadlock isn't to pull harder, but to drop the rope. When you stop responding as expected, the entire manipulative mechanism fails. It's not because you won a war, but because you refused to play a game that was never worth your peace. This is the art of Stoic boundary setting. You don't need a loud breakup or to prove you're unaffected. You remain present and calm, but you no longer allow bitter words or manipulative tactics to penetrate your inner sanctum. In this light, ignoring is no longer avoidance. It is a conscious act of self-preservation. Part 5. Mastering the inner voice. Ignoring remains an incomplete defense if you only apply it to the outside world. Ironically, the one who exhausts you the most is often not a bitter colleague or a gossip, but the silent voice echoing in your head every day. It whispers that you aren't good enough, that you will fail, that others are watching and waiting for you to stumble. If you aren't vigilant, you will live your whole life led by an invisible judge wearing your own face. A small mistake in the morning, an awkward word in a crowd, moments that should be long gone, yet your mind refuses to let them go. At night, you replay those images, imprisoning yourself in assumptions, self-blame, and worst-case scenarios that never happened. What tires us most is often not reality, but how the mind prolongs the pain far beyond the original event. Every time you believe that voice implicitly, you unintentionally grant it more power. Therefore, mastering the inner self doesn't mean stifling thoughts or forcing toxic positivity. The more you suppress them, the stronger those voices return. What is needed is a mindful distance, to observe them without immediately identifying with them. When insecurity arises, see it as a movement of the mind, not the ultimate truth of who you are. Don't argue with it. Don't submit to it. Simply let it pass without pouring in more energy. When you learn not to believe every judgment born within, a deeper form of freedom takes shape. You are no longer swayed by the crowd outside, nor dragged along by the noise inside. As both sources of turbulence settle, a new space opens up, where you no longer live to react, but begin to live to choose. Part 6. The power of self-validation. The power you have long been searching for has never truly been in the hands of others. It has always been yours. You simply left that seat vacant for too long while chasing approval from the eyes of the world. We grow up in a world that unconsciously teaches us to live by the nod. A career choice needs to be endorsed, an achievement needs to be recognized, and even the way we present ourselves is often dictated by the expectations of others. When your self-worth is outsourced to the crowd, your life becomes more fragile than you imagine. If they cheer, you feel valuable. If they turn away, you begin to doubt your entire existence. This is why external validation can never be a stable foundation for a free life. It is too fickle, too prone to change, and too dependent on the moods, prejudices, and depth of others. But once you have learned to reject the noise outside and stop bowing to the judge within, a new silence emerges. And in that silence, self-validation begins to take root. It doesn't turn you into a rebel against the world, nor does it force you to coldly cut all ties. It simply demands that you reclaim the right to value yourself and place it back where it truly belongs. This spirit is close to what Carl Jung once suggested. The greatest privilege of a lifetime is to dare to become who you truly are. To do that, you must have the courage not to live as a product assembled from external expectations. You need a private constitution for your inner world. When you know your choices align with your conscience and core values, you no longer need the world's applause to feel valid. You walk through both flattery and sarcasm with the same composure, understanding that none of those words have the power to define you. Part 7. Becoming the anchor amidst the storm. You have learned to reclaim your attention, set boundaries, master your inner voice, and validate yourself. But this does not mean the outside world will become any gentler. Life will continue to be windy. There will still be dramatic people, unexpected crises, unreasonable pressures, and chaotic moments that seem strong enough to sweep away the peace you've just built. And it is here that the art of ignoring reaches its highest state. Not withdrawing from life, but remaining present in the eye of the storm without letting the storm enter you. When a crisis hits, a project collapses at the last minute, a groundless rumor spreads, or pressure mounts from irrational demands, the crowd's typical reaction is panic and emotional turbulence. But you no longer have to live by that inertia. You step back. You observe. You decouple what you can control from the mere noise. Then, you channel your energy only into what truly lies within your sphere of action. This isn't cold indifference. It is a form of mature clarity. You no longer allow every fluctuation the right to consume you. The strength of a person does not lie in making life stop waving, but in the ability to keep their innermost core from being knocked off its axis. That is when you become the anchor in the storm. Not loud, not showy, with nothing to prove. Just steady. You still walk through this world, seeing all its chaos, vanity, and provocation, but nothing can easily pull you away from yourself. You understand that true peace does not come from everything outside being in order, but from your inner world no longer being dependent on them. In that very stillness, a truth becomes clearer than ever. No one can take away your peace unless you give them the power to do so. Not a word, not an event, not a look or a force can control your inner world unless you voluntarily open the door. Once you understand that, you don't just learn to ignore, you learn to live free. From that moment on, life is no longer a place where you react to every noise, but a place where you calmly choose what is truly worthy of entering your mind. In a world that hungers for attention and constantly seeks to drag you into endless drama, the greatest power often lies in the word no. Refusing to react is not weakness. It is a clear declaration that you are the one who decides what is worthy of entering your mind. Let the noise outside remain noise. Let the manipulators stay trapped in their own thirst for control. Your task is to keep your inner self steady, guard your boundaries, and reserve your energy only for the things that make your life deeper, clearer, and more meaningful. The journey of filtering out the noise to reach inner freedom has never been easy. It demands alertness, discipline, and sometimes a sharp severance from what no longer serves you. But you do not have to walk this path alone. If this video touched something real within you, please subscribe to the channel, leave your thoughts in the comments, and continue this walk with Stoic Journey. Your presence here is more than just support. It is a commitment that from this day forward, you will stop living by reaction and start living by choice. And now, choose the video appearing on your screen to continue tempering your mind. Hold on to that serenity. Protect your inner world. and I will see you on the next stage of the journey to self-mastery.